anything wrong. But out of nowhere, a patrol car signals you to pull over. You see the flashing lights, your heart rate spikes, your mind begins to race. You expect the cop to walk up to your window and say something about you maybe speeding, or maybe you didn't use your turn signal. But instead, the cop walks up, knocks on your window, you roll the window down, and the first thing he does is lean in and go, "Smells like marijuana." What do you say? What should you do? Is there something you can do to protect yourself, and can you stop the cops from pulling this on you? Most people freeze. They panic. And in the moment of panic, they either say the wrong thing or they do the wrong thing. That leads an officer to believe, you just gave me consent. And just like that, your Fourth Amendment rights vanish. In this video,
it's crazy because everything is about consent. Consent. That's because they cannot. They're not supposed to violate your rights, violate your free will, violate your consent. And that's even with the spiritual realm too, because you gotta give consent to certain beings in order for them to enter your vessel. The freaking body can house up to what they say, a couple spirits, and I don't know what's the exact number, but I'm pretty sure it's a couple hundred. You feel me, yo? It's like everything is consent, everything is free will, because you're a being, you're a sovereign being, so it's like it's different.
I'm going to walk you through exactly what to say and what to do if you ever find yourself in this moment. From traffic stops to knock and talks to cops walking right up to you claiming they smell weed, I'm going to walk you through the exact phrases to say, the tricks and the traps cops will use in this situation, and the exact steps you can take to protect yourself and stand up for your rights. Let's start at the core of our constitutional rights. The Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution says, and I quote, "The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated." But what does that actually mean in real life? That means a cop can't just rummage through your pockets, your car, your home, or your property without a good reason. That reason is known legally as probable cause. But there are layers to this. Probable cause, that means an officer has enough clear facts in front of him to lead someone to reasonably believe that a crime is being committed. Think of probable cause as if you were to walk into your house, see smoke coming out of your kitchen, you have a good reason to believe there's a fire going on. Why? Because where there's smoke, there's usually fire. But what about the term people use, reasonable suspicion? This is a much lower bar. Cops only need reasonable suspicion to pull you over for a traffic stop. That means they only need to have a lesser amount of evidence to temporarily detain you to see if a crime may be going on. But see, this is where most people get trapped, because police often blur the line. Here's their trick. They'll detain you based upon reasonable suspicion, but then they will fish for probable cause based on your nervousness, maybe your behavior, something about you.
Say that again. They'll do what?
Fish for probable. Here's their trick. They'll detain you based upon reasonable suspicion, but then they will fish for probable cause.
Reasonable suspicion. Oh, this nigga driving crazy. This nigga look drunk.
Based on
probable cause. His breath smell like fucking alcohol. That's probable cause to search your shit.
Maybe your behavior. Something about you they don't like. They think they can add up to probable cause. Speaking of fishing for probable cause, this brings us to probably one of the most abused statements by police officers out in the field during traffic stops. When cops use the smell test, they claim, "I smell marijuana." This phrase has been used for decades as a key to get into your car because they claim smell equals probable cause. And it's true. That's exactly how that has worked until recently. So now I want to break down specifically, how should you analyze this situation if a cop walks up to you and claims they can search your vehicle because they claim they smell marijuana? I'm giving you 3 big questions you need to ask. You can do the analysis here to determine what sort of situation you're in and exactly what to say if a cop walks up to you. So number 1, is marijuana legal in your state?
Yes.
If it's currently legal, it is very unlikely that police are going to be able to use the smell of burnt or fresh, yeah, there's a difference, burnt or fresh marijuana as a basis to establish probable cause to search your car. And I'll cover some specific examples of states.
There's a such thing as a weed DUI, so I'm interested in what you
see this here in a minute. But if marijuana is illegal, states like Texas, now there's a much higher probability courts are going to enforce and claim that cops say that when they smell supposedly marijuana, it can be used as probable cause to search your vehicle. For example, in Texas, under current law, it is still a misdemeanor crime subject to a potential arrest if you have any usable amount of marijuana. So if that's your state, if that's your situation, be aware, cops are going to use this trick on you over and over again. Question number 2, is the cop, when he pulls you over and starts asking you, saying, "Do you smell that? I think I smell marijuana," does he claim it's burnt? the burnt odor of marijuana or the fresh smell of marijuana. You say, Jeff, why does it matter if there's a difference? Well, let me tell you, the smell of burnt odor of marijuana is a big difference, because if they're claiming it's burnt marijuana smell, now it's much more difficult for the police officer to tie a burnt odor smell to the actual car, because someone could have smoked the marijuana from another location and it carried over residually. You could have just been around someone else who has smoked marijuana, and now you have this odor about you, but it may not have anything to do with the vehicle. The reality is this: I've rented rental cars.
Do you owe the IRS? Maybe it's $5,000, $50,000, or even $500,000. Don't lose hope. Tax
Rental cars that the moment I got into the car, it immediately reeked of marijuana, the burnt odor of marijuana. So the burnt odor of marijuana can linger for days, and in reality, it has very little to do with any potential illegal possession of marijuana. But now, what about cops claiming they smell the odor of fresh marijuana in the car? Now, not that I'm a marijuana expert, but I can tell you this: there's a very distinct difference between the odor of fresh marijuana and maybe stuff that had just recently been cut. You've got seeds and stems, all that's there, and the actual burnt odor of marijuana. If they claim it's fresh odor of marijuana, quite a bit different situation, because now that is usually, courts have ruled, that would be much more easily tied to the use and the possession of it within the vehicle itself. But watch out for this trick. Cops, the good ones, know this. They know that they'll look at it and say, I'm not sure exactly what I want to say here, so let me see if I can get the driver to admit to it. They'll walk up and they'll say, you smell that? What does that smell like to you? And sometimes people, in a moment of hoping that the cop will work with them and maybe he's going to, just cut them loose because it's marijuana, they'll say, yeah, man, I know, it's marijuana. So they'll want you to admit that it smells like burnt marijuana or that it smells like fresh marijuana.
They always want you to incriminate yourself. That's why you should just shut the fuck up. That's why you should just shut the fuck up. That's just the reality.
Now it makes it much easier on the officer because they don't have to prove it. They now have your confession to it. Question number 3, if cops now claim they have probable cause to search your car because of the smell of marijuana, does that now allow them to extend that probable cause to search everyone else in the car? This brings us to the very important 1948 Supreme Court case of United States versus D. Ray. This case was very important because it ruled that just because police officers have probable cause to the driver, it doesn't mean it immediately transfers over that same probable cause to everyone else in the car. So in other words, if cops claim they smell the odor of marijuana in the car, the law will actually categorize the car as a container. And who has possession or control of that container? The driver, not the passengers. So they're going to have to come up with separate, independent probable cause to do anything to anyone else in that car.
See, that's interesting right there.
But let me give you the cop playbook here. The first thing they'll do if they smell marijuana is they'll say they now have probable cause for the driver. So they'll get the driver out of the car and they'll start to talk to the driver to see if they can find anything from him to establish probable cause for the actual passengers. And then another cop will go and talk to the passengers to try to see if they can get them to admit to anything either about the driver or anything else they may know about inside the car. But this is really important. Cops cannot do anything. If everyone exercises their constitutional rights and closes their mouth, there's two big problems here. Number one, there's no separate independent probable cause for any...
See, exercise your rights and shut the fuck up, basically. I don't answer questions. That's all you got.
The other passengers unless someone talks. But secondly, remember, it must be proven that someone exercised care, custody, or control over these so-called drugs. And if there are drugs found in between multiple people within a vehicle, it makes it very difficult to prove intent. You have to know the drugs are there in order for the officer to actually be able to sustain a case against you. Remember, with possession of marijuana, the police and the prosecutor, they don't have to prove ownership. They actually have to prove intent to exercise care, custody, or control. So here's the critical question the cops must answer if you find yourself as a passenger in a car. They have to answer, what separate evidence exists, facts exist, that allow me to believe there's probable cause that a crime is being committed, that this smell of marijuana is in any way associated with these passengers, and if you cannot establish separate probable cause, it would be an illegal detainment and an illegal arrest. Let me be clear, being in the vehicle alone, without any other evidence, is insufficient for the police to claim they have probable cause to pull a passenger out and either detain them or arrest them. So how do cops make this connection and actually establish enough evidence to pull people out of the car, the passengers in the car? Well, here's some of the things. I'm going to give you a list of some of the items they look for. They're looking for behavior. One of those things they're looking for are bloodshot eyes. They're looking to see if there's any signs of intoxication. Number 3, they look for what they call meth mouth, missing hair. They're looking for burnt fingertips, burnt lips, anything that would indicate active drug abuse in someone's life. Cops are looking for active evidence to create a profile of a drug user, but they must articulate specific facts establishing this. Otherwise, they don't have enough to do anything to the passengers in the car. That being said, I dealt with a case one time where the driver actually panicked during the traffic stop and quickly tried to shove his bag of marijuana under the passenger seat. Of course, there was a guy sitting there, his friend, and the police saw him making this quick furtive movement, and now that gave them all the evidence they needed, in addition to the smell of marijuana, to not only get the driver out of the car, but they could get all the passengers out of the car, and everybody was able to be searched because now there was movement associated not just with the driver, but also with a potential passenger. Now, let's look at some specific states where they've made some changes to their laws so that you know where you stand. How do we...
You know your business better than anyone, right? So why not build an app to run it with Base 44? This finance app solves your business.
Oh God.
How do we really know if the news we are reading is unbiased and fair? With competing narratives, media bias, and big tech censorship, cutting through the noise to see what's really happening isn't always easy. To stay better informed and transform the way you read the news. The state of Maryland. In 2020, courts ruled that the odor of marijuana is not enough evidence to search a person. And as of 2023, a smell and odor of marijuana is no longer enough to search a car either. But what if an officer continues? Maybe they don't know the law and they still demand to be able to search your car. You can say, officer, as soon as he hands you a ticket, say, am I free to leave or am I being And know that if they're pulling you over and it feels like you didn't do much of anything wrong, they're really fishing for more. And the way to stop a pretext stop is that if an officer starts to look to write you a ticket, always exercise your right to remain silent. You don't have to say anything. And as soon as he hands you a ticket, say, am I free to leave or am I being detained? The moment the officer hands you that ticket, the reason for the stop is over and legally you are allowed to leave. If the officer wants to hold you longer, he must have separate legal basis to do so. Loophole number 2, I'm holding the car for a canine unit. The Supreme Court case of Rodriguez versus United States laid it out very clearly that cops cannot prolong a traffic stop beyond the original reason they pulled you over. So in other words, if